Welcome back to the Vast Capital Radio podcast. I am sitting here with our honored guest, Mr. Larry Harvey. So great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Well, you too. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Absolutely. You got to have a Lara and a Larry in the
That's
same
right.
room
You
at
got
some
to.
point.
Yeah.
I have had the pleasure of knowing you over the last multiple years.
Right.
When we were in our teens is when we met, right? And
I think I was a little older than that,
okay,
but
well,
that's
your
okay.
20s. Yeah, we'll take that. Um, I'm trying to keep my youth as
I
long
get
as
it.
I can. And you have just been, I mean, I see you all over. And I would really like to know, first and foremost, how you even got to Putnam County.
Well, it's kind of a funny story. My grandfather was working with Hudson Pulp and Paper up in Plattsburgh, New York. My dad was in the Navy at that time, and so my grandfather moved down here from Plattsburgh to start the tissue converting side of then Hudson Pulp and Paper, which we
It's a
know now
mouthful.
as Georgia Pacific. So when my dad got out of the Navy, he came here. He had met my mother up in New Jersey. My my mother's grandfather was building houses here in Putnam County for the mill houses.
Okay.
So a lot of the houses, if you go back over Roselle Avenue area, Silver Lake, they all look the same, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So they were building those mill houses because then at the time the mill had almost 3,000 employees,
Right.
so it was huge. So they were building mill houses, and my parents settled here.
Hmm.
My mother was a nurse here at the hospital, and my dad was a city policeman when he got out of the Navy. So my sister was born at the old hospital over on Palm Avenue, the Glendale Hospital, and my dad got fired because he was kind of a heavy-handed police officer at the time. So he was, and they still have his file down here, and you don't want to read it. But so dad got a job in Jacksonville, and I was born in Baptist Memorial in Palaca. So then, I mean, in Jacksonville. So then, Hurricane Dora came,
Hmm.
and we lived out near Ponte Vedra. That was when Ponte Vedra there was nothing out there. I mean, it
Right.
was just desolate land, the beach.
Which is wild to think that
Yeah.
it was ever that way at this
So
point.
we had to go to Daytona, and my mom and dad split up, and my dad went back up north to Plattsburgh, and my mom stayed in Daytona. So then she passed away early in life.
Mm.
She was 32.
Oh, my.
We were 8 and 9. We came up with our dad. My dad came back, and we came up to live with our grandparents here on Roselle Avenue. So I went to the old Catholic school. And
Uh-huh.
okay, I went to Mosley Elementary. The middle school split session because
Okay.
remember we had to go morning or afternoon. And then I went to Palaca Central High and graduated the second graduated class at what we call the new high school, but that was back in '79. But that's the high school currently. So
Okay.
yeah,
Very
so
nice.
that's kind of how the Harveys got here.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
about 8 or 9, you officially landed.
Officially landed back in Putnam County, been here all ever since.
Well,
You
then
know,
you're a resident,
I am.
of your Putnam County.
And actually lived, I mean, on Roselle, we were just 3 houses away from Taylor Douglas. So,
I'm so sorry to
yeah,
hear that.
growing up in that area,
Uh-huh.
Taylor's a little older than me, so it was okay.
Yeah.
But he was a great guy then. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think they all graduated. I get all the skinny, all the details.
right.
They graduated in 70, and apparently that class was a a fun class. We'll put it that way. So you graduated in 79. That makes sense.
I think every class is a fun class, don't you think?
I would like to say yes, and I think every class thinks their class is the
Yeah,
best class.
yeah.
So we'll have to do a battle of the classes. Whose are better? Uh,
I was just glad to get out. That
right?
was and graduate.
What'd you do after you graduated?
Well, actually, I worked at Golden Corral washing dishes when they came, and then I went to work for Pantry Pride Supermarket in the Government Plaza, where I'm currently located now. So,
Huh,
yeah,
life brought you full circle.
isn't that wild?
It's even more wild, honestly, that you mentioned that plaza because I was doing some research on history for Putnam County, and I have a whole series of photos from way back when
Right?
and what it used to look like. And I found a picture of the plaza back then,
Yeah.
and it might have been when you were in it. So,
I have a picture of my station wagon that looked like what was it, Griswold
Oh, yeah,
Vacation.
yeah.
Yeah, it was sitting out there, but yes,
National
but we
Lampoons.
had Neisner's department, we had Pantry Pride, we had the movie theater,
Uh-huh.
we had Tom Falvey's department store, Eckerd Drug. I think Frank Bush Insurance was there with Allstate.
Oh, they've been around
Sears, with
forever.
Sears,
Yeah.
and then the hairdressers and the little restaurant, and we had a lot, and another the haircut guys, the guys that only did men's haircut.
Mhm.
So there was a lot going on there. It was a
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was really neat. But, I found a book one time that said on the outskirts of, Palaca was the plaza,
Mhm.
and now you think that's really
Outskirts
almost
of
in the
Palaca.
heart,
Right, exactly.
but yeah, it's kinda
Outskirts of
yeah,
Palaca.
yeah.
The maybe their perception of, how far
Well,
away
I
things
remember
were.
coming down here. J.C. Penney was on the corner right
Yeah,
over here.
yeah,
So, I mean, everything was down. Western Auto was the best store to go in because they had a whole wall full of guns. And as a young boy, you just stand there and look at all these guns that you thought, I
yeah.
want that one and that one and that one.
Right?
So it was really good back then. It was
Yeah.
downtown was bustling at the time. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Speaking of digging around, I found a book. It was on a cemetery site, and I don't think that I ever managed to land back on the site that it came from, but it was Burt's or Bunts. I can't remember which one. There's a B and a Z for sure in it, but it was a directory, and it was a $3 directory, and this is when they called that Lemon Street.
right.
And so they had, I mean, there were just businesses after businesses after businesses, and I really hope to see that come back to life. That
I think you
thriving
will.
metropolis. Oh, for sure.
I think a lot of people are back into revitalization instead of building. Most all towns in Florida go west if you start looking at because they can't go east. They can only go so far east and they hit the ocean.
Right.
They go west, they're going to hit the other coastline. But there's a lot of rural nature in between the two.
Right.
So you see most of the state, I mean the cities go west in our state.
Hmm.
So I think you'll see that. I think the quaintness, the getting back to, and plus what the people have done in this area about getting some of the old buildings and bringing people back downtown town.
Right.
I think that's important. So yeah,
Absolutely. I share that sentiment. I think, as I continue to talk to people, not just in the interview setting, but just as far as the community when I'm out and about. Uh, during the Blue Crab, I would ask people as I randomly walk by on the street, where are you from? What do you
right.
enjoy? And all of them enjoy the small town feel without the big bustling craziness.
Well, come on. I mean, I just left Washington D.C. last week.
Mm,
There's not a green space available for
how sad.
people. And how do you live like that? We're not used to that.
Right,
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
we're used to going barefoot, walking in the grass and, in our yard. We're not used to all this. This is foreign to us,
Right.
you
I
know.
like that you go barefoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a natural thing.
You
My
have
dad always told
you're
me, "Put
supposed to
shoes on."
be. No,
Right, that's how we
you're supposed to
started,
be
barefoot.
connected. Right, right, exactly.
Grounding. I
Right,
think that's the
grounding.
term. So,
But
d
but it's
work
foreign to
yeah,
I mean, it's foreign to them that we live the way we live, and it's foreign to us that they live the way they live.
yeah.
But I don't wanna live that way. I wanna live
Mm-mm.
in a nice, quaint community that everybody helps each other and knows you pick and choose who you wanna help on any given day,
Right.
and I like that idea.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely, and you do a great job of it. I'm curious, so you worked at the Golden Corral. They could pay you in those roles with the honey butter, and
I know,
oh my
right?
gosh,
Yeah.
I'm glad the Lord saw fit that I not be able to eat gluten because I could eat my body weight in those rolls. Anyway, and then you worked over at the store in the
Pantry
complex.
Pride,
Yeah.
yeah, Pantry Pride
Now,
grocery store.
were you just working full time? A lot of people just go from school to work, or were you going to college at the
I
time?
was going to work during school, high
Hmm.
school, and then, I would leave over the high school, catch a ride over to Painter Pride and work, or I'd walk. I didn't have a car at that time, and then when I graduated from high school, I got a car
Hmm.
and was able to drive back and forth. So, yeah, I mean, that's what we did, and
Right.
then when Painter Pride finally they went bankrupt,
Mm.
and they sold their business, and I went to work for Miller Grocery Store. So
Oh
Miller's
Lord.
was right there where
Yeah.
Save-A-Lot is,
Yep.
but I started out in the Interlochen area because They were just building the store out there.
Okay.
So that was 40 some odd years ago that I went out there and started working. And that's where I met my wife, Linda. So,
Oh.
yeah.
In the store, was she a, customer?
The
Was
s
she
Yes,
working
the
with you?
story goes that she was I tell it a little differently than she does.
We'll stick with your version, but
Yeah,
she gonna have to come on here and give me her
yeah.
testimony.
She says yeah. So I remember her needing something off the top shelf. My wife is 4'10" and a half,
Oh my
and I'm
goodness, she
six
is a
four.
tiny lady.
Yeah, so I'm 6'4". So I remember getting something off the top shelf and handing it to her and falling in love. I mean, I
Oh,
remember that touch even to this day, and I thought,
oh,
so yeah,
love it.
yeah, it was. It was a very special moment. So,
Well, we don't need any other story. That's a Hallmark movie story right there.
well, yeah, I mean, we met 40 years ago, and we started dating, and we got married on Valentine's Day.
Oh, I love
So
that.
yeah, we wanted to do that. We had no money. My wife's wedding dress came from down here at uh, I think it was a smart shop that Trish Leary and her family owned down here on St. John's Avenue. We were driving down St. John's Avenue one night. I think we had taken we came down to get some Dairy Queen ice cream or something.
Oh, love Dairy
And
Queen.
so we're driving down to the river and my wife sees this dress in the window, right? Jumps out of the car. I mean, it's rolling down the
Oh
road
my
to
goodness.
go look at this dress and said, "That's the dress." And I think the dress was like $85, but
Mhm.
that was a lot of money.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, so I think our whole wedding cost us maybe 150, and the dress was 85 of
Over
it.
half of it, yep. As long as she looked good, the rest is
That's
trivial.
all that mattered, and we got married on a lake out in Interlaken, Lake Lagonda, and that's a whole 'nother story of her family in that area, so, yeah.
So she's got roots here too,
Her
or
okay.
has roots here.
Yeah, yeah. So let me tell you the story about her roots, okay?
Okay.
Because it's kind of fascinating that the old town hall in Interlaken had wooden windows, and they put a stake up during the day to hold the wind up so breeze could come through. This is the old historic downtown town hall. So one day, this guy pulls up on a horse, rides up, and he sticks the horse's head through the window because this attractive lady's sitting there. And he was a pretty flamboyant man. I loved him to death. Um, but she said to him, "Why are you on my horse?" And he said, "Well, I'm not on your horse. I rented this horse from the man down the road in Manville." And she said, "Well, the man down the road is my daddy, and you're on my horse." And he was the paymaster for the telegraph poles that were going up.
Okay.
So he politely left and rode the horse off. And the next week came and bought her a box of chocolates at the Brush store
Uh-huh.
in Interlaken, took him to her. And so they went on a date, wherever that is,
Right.
orange groves,
Right.
and,
Yes.
that's all that was in Interlaken basically. And they decided they fell in love and decided 2 weeks later to elope. But the town was flooded in and they couldn't get out. So they had to wait for the water to recede.
Oh my
And they
goodness.
were married 70 years.
Wow.
And he went off one day, came home from work, and he said, "Verna," his name was Scotty, he says, "I've decided I'm going to Hollywood, California." And she said, "Why?" "I want to be in one of those movies." So he was an extra for the Apache movie and stuff.
I love that he
Yeah,
was just
he
like,
just
"I'm gonna go do that," and
it's
did it.
and she was a postmaster, so she's like, "Okay, I'm fine." My mother-in-law was her daughter, and I'm gonna so she said, "Me and Dottie will stay here, and you go do your thing." And a few years later, he came home, and but it was something he wanted to do, and he just did it, and she allowed it, proved it, whatever you want to say.
That's
So
great.
so yes, my wife. If it wasn't for that,
Uh-huh.
the horse's head into outside the window, I would have never known my wife.
Right.
So
That's a great
it's
story.
kind of funny how small of a world it really, really is.
Oh,
So yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I find that more and more. Again, talking to people, and these little things just line up. And I love when I have these interviews, and I'll have somebody who the next person has no idea that I'm interviewing somebody, and they all just kind of like little puzzle pieces
right.
just start napping together. So
Yeah.
anyway,
And you
uh,
go, "Why? I couldn't even put this thing together
no,
like that."
no,
Right.
exactly. And so it, yeah, it always tells me that I am very passionate about what I'm doing and that this is where I'm meant to be. So
Well, I think we all have a good story to tell,
absolutely.
and you know what I always hope about in my life is someone that says, "I could do what you did. I could do that. Matter of fact, I could possibly do it better." We wanna leave our world better than what we found it, and I want
Exactly.
somebody to come behind me and leave it better too. Take it
That's
to the
big
next
shoes,
level.
Larry. You do a lot.
I do a
So
lot. Can I tell you why I started doing a lot?
that is one of the
Okay.
questions I'd like to get to.
Well,
Yes,
good.
sir.
Well, I worked at Hit Miller Grocery Store, and then we had three daughters, and there wasn't a lot of money. And my wife taught dance out in Interlaken to about 100 kids a month that she would teach dance in a little studio beside our mobile home. And I just had to start making money. So I went in the insurance business. This guy came by and said, if you go out and collect on a debit, and debit is where you put a dollar in the envelope or 50 cent or whatever. And, I worked the Barden area. Well, to make a long story short, I was able to buy an agency, a small little PNC, property and casualty agency in Interlaken. And always knew that if I could just work harder than the next person,
Mhm.
but I never had a lot of money like some people do.
Right.
So, but I thought, I can't write a check, so I'll volunteer. And I found so much satisfaction in volunteering.
Okay.
Okay, so that's how it started. And just little things, take liver and onion night, for example.
That hit the
Yeah,
historic liver and onion night. You've been doing that. How long have you been doing
it
that?
was 26 years. Yeah,
Wow.
26 years just last April. So, and that all started at the hunting camp one day when some guy says, because I was a camp cook, said, "Larry, can you cook liver? Because you gotta know what you're doing
Mhm.
when you cook liver." And I said, "Sure, I can." "Well, would you do that one day?" And I said, "The only way I'm gonna do it if we raise money for something." Well, my mother died of cancer. I've had cancer. A lot of folks have been affected by cancer in our family and everybody's family here. So I said, "We'll raise money for the Cancer Society." Well, back then we didn't have the Putnam First Cancer
Right.
Fund. So it was just the American Cancer Society. So we started raising money for that. And then the Relay for Life came along
Yep.
and,
I remember that.
and all that. And then Putnam First Cancer Fund came. So there was some competing interest for that. And now we just supported Putnam First Cancer Fund.
Which
And
is a
when,
great cause, by the way.
right, it's wonderful. And when you talk to people, they go, "Oh, I can't do liver." And they make that funky face, where
I controlled that face
you
that happened when I heard liver and
just
onions.
go, but then I go, "Well, I cook steaks for those people who can't do liver."
You got a second hook.
That's right. You can't get away from me. I'm a
Right.
salesman, So yeah, so that's how it started. And I think last year we raised over $3,500 eating
Wow.
liver and onion. Now, I say that to say
That
this.
is a skill, by the way.
You could do in your neighborhood spaghetti and meatball night.
Right?
You could do fish fry night. You could do whatever you wanted to do. You could do fried bologna sandwiches if you like fried bologna
That was
sandwiches.
a left field one, Larry. I did you gotta make sure you have the cut though, so it doesn't
Gotta have
bubble
it
up.
cut. You
Yeah.
gotta have white bread.
Yeah.
And you gotta have the right mayonnaise, cheese, and you gotta peel it off the roof of your mouth, remember?
Exactly. Yes.
But it doesn't matter what you can do, just do something.
Yes.
Just do something.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody knows 100 people. We all
Exactly.
know 100 people. So go find your 100 people, and when you put your $10 with their $10, you got some serious money
Yeah.
starting to add up, and some people pay more. We never charged for liver and onions until last year. We had to make a $10 a plate. People just came and made donations, and all that money went to Putnam First Cancer Fund. And then you saw the other day, probably you saw where now I'm Commissioner Tuna Fish, and I probably shouldn't say that.
Nope,
Um,
I like it.
but but Hitchcock's grocery store had all these points
Yes.
that you could accumulate if you bought things. Well, I never wanted to spend them on me because I didn't buy it for me. I
Right.
bought it for fundraisers that I did through the college or Rotary or whatever we were doing. So I was always amassing these great amount of points. So, and I've always been talking to the store managers about let's use my points to do something in the community. So I was in Hitchcock the other morning, a few months back, and they had this whole buggy full of tuna fish packs,
Mhm.
right? And it said 2 for $1. And I thought, 2 for $1. I got 26,000 points,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
So I'm like, I wonder how much that would buy. Because Feed the Need sends out to the local schools
Mhm.
800 kids a week to feed them.
Right.
And you got a pack of tuna fish. All you gotta do is open it up and you can eat it straight out of the pack. So I called the store manager, who's a friend of mine. I said, Brandy, how much would my points buy? And I said, I want to buy that whole buggy full. And she said, well, I've got 11 cases in the back room. I went, really? 3,300 packs of
Oh
tuna
my
fish.
goodness.
And one Sunday she called me and she said, I'm using all your points, but you can get the whole 11 cases for it. So we really, if you look at it that way, we went 3 meals plus some to
Right.
kids who couldn't, all because I was buying food for other fundraisers, amassing points. Now just imagine if your 100 friends put together a group,
Mhm.
you know, and said, okay, we're all going to amass our points together. We're all going to use the same phone number and we're going to do this. How many points would you have at a local grocery store?
That's so clever.
I know.
What I like about this story truly is, um, growing up, my parents worked very hard to provide for us, and as I became an adult, I worked very hard to provide for my children. But I can't go out and write $1,000 checks, or that there have been times where I couldn't write a $10 check. I worked to pay the bills,
That's right.
and that's what I could do. But as I found my love of Putnam County, and I was born and raised here. Again, work home
Right.
family. That's what I did. I really didn't understand the the change that I could make as one individual. So it wasn't that I didn't care. It's just that I guess apathetic would be the right word.
Right.
And started as I came out of the professional industry and came off of working from home. Had a little waitressing job just to get back in there, hearing from people in the community about the things that they were doing, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of
Yeah.
cool," and really found out how much this community has to offer. And I got very passionate about learning about it. And the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to give back. And so then I found myself bagging groceries with the women's club,
Right.
or going to Rotary cleanup or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to ever commit a dollar to it, but I could go out and volunteer. When the kids were real young, I wanted them to see how blessed they were during Christmas. So I took them to help pass out kit toys to other children. And that was a huge, like, their minds were blown that these kids are sitting in a building with no AC, and the only gifts that they're going to get are sitting right here in
That's
front of
right.
us. So I love that you were like, okay, well, what can I do? Liver and onions. And you made
Or
liver and
you
onions.
had Nicole here the other day from
Mhm.
Keep Putnam Beautiful, and I remember her the predecessor to that, Kate Podovich, I think it was, yeah, Kate, who started it here in the county, and she would wear a trench coat with garbage attached to it to get the idea of garbage. And I remember one time we were out doing a cleanup, and always stuck with me. She said, Larry, in Florida, every piece of trash you pick up tries to get to our waterways. If you
Mm,
stop and think about it, if it's in the ditch, it's flowing somewhere,
sure.
it's trying to get to our waterway. And if we can avoid that, just think how much better we'd be. And I remember my first real big bag of garbage, and it was a lot of work, don't get me wrong. But then when I got back to the site and met up with everybody who also had their bag of garbage, we cleaned up 2 truckloads at this area that would have never gotten cleaned up.
Right.
So then that hooked me. I was like,
Oh yeah, it's real
yeah,
easy
once you
to
pick up
get.
garbage, you should, yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, it's over.
I got pickers out there
And
right now.
you started where you pick up in your neighborhood
Yep.
while you're walking, exercise, just
Yep.
take a bag, pick it up.
Yep.
Well, you'd be surprised at how much stuff you can get, you
Nicole
know.
gave a fact in that interview. If every person picked up 150 pieces of garbage, and that's menial, that we could clean up the world.
That's right.
And my mind was blown. Like, obviously, you're gonna have like these big Like she mentioned, somebody called about a porta potty floating down the St. John's. Can you come pick that up? There are going to be some things outside of our realm, but the
Right,
concept, nonetheless,
right.
is 150 pieces of garbage. That's nothing.
Yeah. And once you pick up garbage, you start seeing garbage. You
Yes,
start
you're aware.
seeing, you're going, wow, look at that. If I get that now, it doesn't become 200 pieces of garbage
Yep.
when the mower runs over it or something in that nature.
Well
So,
said.
I mean, that's things we can avoid to protect our environment. I can't write a check for, $10,000 to help our environment, but I can sure be a part of cleaning it up. And that's
Exactly.
what I want to be about. So I want somebody to come behind us when we're old and decrepit and can't move hardly and take that
100 years from now.
yeah, take that mantle and say, "I can do that." That's an easy one. I can easily what if you had cereal night at your house? And you
Right.
charged everybody $5 a bowl and you gave it to some organization or whatever, it doesn't matter,
That's a good point.
you
If you
know?
like to gather with friends, it doesn't have to be. I mean, you can get a good buy one get one at Publix for a cereal, or go to Hitchcock's and get points at the same time you're
Eh,
buying cereal.
whatever, or yeah, it doesn't matter, just do something. Do some little thing to make things a little bit better for someone else. I told you my mother was a single mother at that time and raised 2 children, went back to school, became a nurse. You know, I remember I'm gonna get a little personal here. I remember standing in the food line to get food,
Hmm.
and it bothered me really, really bad. Bothered me for a lot of reasons, but one, and I was only, 8 years old, but it bothered me that we had to resort to that. That's for people that needed it. We weren't that needy.
Mm,
And I've always looked at my life as if I can help the single mother with 2 kids who's struggling to make a living, if I can solve some of her problems, the rest of the world's fine.
right.
Okay, so the rest of the world's good. So I looked at that and I said, Mom, I'm never standing in that line again. And it gave me that passion to get out and work. I knew I could make money.
Hmm.
And I told my neighbor, Mr. Bruce, I remember it in Daytona as well as I'm sitting here. I said, You're paying me to mow your yard. I said, Don't pay me anymore. Let me buy your lawnmower from you. And he did. I mowed his yard for free for a year and a half until mom died, and he gave me the gas can,
Hmm.
and I would go up and down the road mowing yards, and I could start making money, and I remember going to the local Winn-Dixie store in Daytona and buying a ham. I was so excited,
Oh, wow.
but
Yeah.
you come just silly little things, but we can all do something, and
Yeah.
that's where so so then Linda and I got married
Hmm.
40 years ago, and we started our agency, our insurance agency, and very successful in a two-light town. We had over 15 employees one time, which was
Oh,
very good,
yeah.
and sold it to a young lady that worked for me, her and her partner, Laura and
Hmm.
John, and they took it to another level, and I went into the political arena. So,
Well, okay. Well, I do want to. I want to shift that way, but I want to go back and think about. I think some people are built that way. A lot of times I'll hear people who come on the podcast and their parents were examples of volunteerism to them. Was that something that you had seen? I mean,
no,
obviously, your mom worked as a
no,
nurse. No,
they didn't. My mother did not. My dad worked at the paper mill when we finally came back to Palaca. He wasn't into all that either.
right,
It was just something that I felt like I could give back and be a part without trying. Like I said, I didn't have any money to write a check, but I had time, just like you had time.
right,
I had time to go out and go, okay, I can pick up a bag of garbage before work. I could go after work and pick it up. It didn't necessarily cost me and my family money to
right.
do that. So that's how I started that.
So that you're one of those that it's just that natural inkling.
And I think once you do it,
Hmm.
once you give the children toys for Christmas, once you feed families that didn't have food, because I know how it felt. I know how people fed our families
Hmm.
sometimes. Um, Once you do it, you want to do more.
Yeah,
It's kind of like that
absolutely.
salesman mentality that once you make the sale,
Uh-huh.
you're ready to go make 2 more sales right
Right.
after that because
That the high.
you're on
Yeah.
that high to go do it and you're good at it. Well, why can't we do that with volunteerism? Why
Right.
can't we do that in our personal life? We can. You feel better. You feel like you've done something. You know, the only time I get a little disappointed is when I feel like that it's not a worthy cause anymore. Maybe it's grown to be something bigger and it doesn't need my help. And
Right.
then I go looking for something else to do.
Yeah.
So,
Time to move on. Is that why you got then into politics because you wanted to use that avenue to help?
no, I have always been interested in politics, and I remember even as a young man watching the Florida Channel,
Mhm.
and my wife would say to me, "Why do you watch that stuff?" And it just always intrigued me. Politics did. So I ran for office. I ran as a very young man, 28 years old, for the House of Representatives. Sid Martin was retiring. He was our state legislator out of Hawthorne, and Sid helped me become a property and casualty agent because you needed 6 months of experience in a class and these classes, and then someone to sign your sponsorship. But I remember going to Tallahassee one day, and I went in his office, and he didn't know me, and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I want to know how I get your job." And he laughed and he
Right.
said, "Well, I'm retiring, and you can run." I didn't have a clue what running for office meant.
Right.
But we were and if anybody had ever asked me to take off my left shoe and sock, it was orange,
Uh-huh.
completely orange, because my sign man out in Inlarkin made me a stencil
Uh-huh.
that fit a 4 by 8 piece of plywood, and at night, we would spray paint them orange.
And so your
We
sock and
couldn't
shoe was
afford signs, but,
right, right.
but we had to make our own. So, I ran for office, and I was the first one defeated, and, um and it just led to a life of wanting to do that.
Mhm.
I thought I ran for office for a few times, county commissioner, lost that, ran for supervisor election, lost that, but it always propelled me into something else. It
Right.
it never hurt me. I don't think anybody should run for office just to gain name recognition. I don't
Right.
believe in that. I think you have to be called, and I
Right.
really do want to say I was called every time. Even though I lost, I was still called, and but
And
it
grew
always,
from it.
yeah, it always brought me to that next level of where I'm supposed to be. Had I not ran for the supervisor of elections office against Mr. Overturf many years ago, my predecessor died in office, the county commissioner, Ed Taylor.
Mhm.
And then that's when I got the phone call, "Would you like to be a county commissioner?" And then you go through the governor's appointment process. That was nerve-wracking, I'll never forget, but, uh, because in election, there's a date that you start,
Mhm.
and you know there's a date certain that on August 20th of this year, the primary is going to happen. So by 7 o'clock, the polls in, over with.
Right.
In the appointment process, you don't know that. You
Right.
don't know what's going on. And I'm not the kind of guy that can go home and sit on my hands and do nothing.
Right.
Just foreign to me.
Yeah.
I've never done that. Why would I do it now? So that process, I would call the governor's office and go, "The governor's going to be in St. Augustine. I'm only 35 minutes from, I can meet with him then." Doesn't work that way. Ugh. So finally, I got a call to go meet with Governor Scott in Tampa
Mhm.
at the airport down there, and we met in this room, and he met with a lot of people that day. And I had a time I had to go talk to him, and he said, "Well, I'm gonna send you a book on how money moves." And it was the most fascinating book I've ever read. It tracks the IRS and how if you move from New Jersey down here, New York or California, how much money you bring with you, what's your tax pay. It was fascinating to me.
Mm.
But it came with postage due of $1.98. You might go, "Well, Larry, what's that about?" Right?
Yeah.
So so a few months back, now Senator Scott comes to the eggs I mean, to the Shrine Club, and we have a dinner for him, um, a Lincoln dinner, and my grandkids are working. So I get the opportunity to welcome him from the microphone. And I said, "Well, I said, Governor, Senator, you gave me a book. You sent me a book on how money moves, but I had to pay $1.98 postage for it, and he laughed about it. So he gave my grandson, my third grandson, $2 and said, 'Tell your grandfather I paid my debt.'" So, you know, so then I was interviewed, and he called me one day during a Rotary meeting, and I had to say, "Governor, I gotta put you on hold for just a moment while I go outside." And he said, "You're gonna make a great county commissioner." And he said, "I'm appointing you now." And I came down to the county office and I said, "Where's my office and where do I start?"
Right.
And they're like, "Really?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm here, ready to go to work."
That's
So
awesome.
my first meeting, our attorney, Russ Castleberry at the time, uh, we hadn't got my official paperwork in, so I couldn't vote, but I
Okay.
could sit there,
Uh-huh.
but I couldn't vote on anything. And we got done with the meeting, I went out, the fax machine was there, and my official paperwork was there. So,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So
So the objective that we have during this time together and sharing this via video, via audio with the world, is to bring hopefully primarily inspiration
yeah.
and education to our viewers. Learn a little bit about the history of Putnam County, the residents, how this community has grown, to talk about the outlook of what's to come. And one of the things I like to highlight is some things maybe people don't understand if they're watching this. So explain to our viewers what a county commissioner does.
Well, I think we go from apples to zoos every day.
Okay.
So mainly our job is to advocate for the citizens of the county in a positive direction. Today, for example, my morning phone call started out with with roads and
Mm.
dirt roads. I have 320 miles of dirt roads in my district alone.
Oh my
I get
goodness.
1 mile of paving from dirt to pave a year. So
No pressure
no
to
pressure
figure
at
out
all.
which one's the
Yeah.
best.
But I try to avoid if we had a flooding problem, if we have a drainage issue, we have those are the roads I try to look. How do we move people faster? How do we connect economic development? A few minutes ago, we met with a judge about some expansion that we're looking at doing, possibly looking at doing. Um, there's all my day will end probably tonight based on garbage. Maybe somebody's upset with garbage. So every day is a new day, which is great for this guy who's got a type A personality.
Mhm.
Because if I had to lay one brick at a time, I would just not, I would jump off the bridge. It
Right,
just doesn't work for me.
right.
But being that I can go do all my talents, advocate for the county, promote the county in a positive direction in the current job that I have,
Mhm.
I think it's the best job in the world, frankly.
I think people forget that they are meant to connect with the commissioners and share their thoughts, and the commission meetings are open to the public, and you're the one to help get our voice heard.
Well, today, just before I came over here, a friend of mine, I get an email. I've been dealing with this problem for over 2 weeks. I talked to him every day last week. He never mentioned it to me. Never, not a word.
Mm,
It could have been solved last week, but he was trying to go. So our job is to try to run interference. It wasn't even our department, if you will. It's another constitutional officer. But once I emailed them, they contacted the person. The problem's solved. You
right.
don't have to wait a week or 2 weeks to get a problem solved. Now, let me say this. In my business, no elected official likes to use the word no. They don't.
Sure.
But no is an answer.
Mhm.
And it's not the answer you want to hear, but sometimes it is the answer that's available to you.
Mm.
And I can't do anything about that. Our job is to try to find solutions. May I share with you one that happened
Yeah,
recently?
absolutely.
So a few years ago, I was being basically not bombarded. That's not the right word, but informed that, and I saw this happening, but it didn't click in my mind. So you go, well, why didn't it click? Well, there's so many problems to deal with. You just don't. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the
Sure.
trees. So a lady contacted me, a mother, and said, my children are having to run between the cars to go from Interlochen High School or the middle school to the library. Can't we put a crossing walk there? Yeah, why not? I saw that for years and years.
Right.
Kids just running through there, but I never put that together that we could do that. I
Yeah.
thought it was something the school board did, but we own the road, so we do it. So I brought that up a couple commissions back and that we needed to put a school crossing there. Like school crossings are expensive. Very, very. If you do
Mm.
them right with the lights and the
Right, right.
flashing and naturally you want the flags going back and forth like on, A1A and St. Augustine,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what was envisioning in my mind. Well, we didn't have the money, so it got shot down pretty quick.
Mm.
So it wasn't maybe a few days later, I'm in the shower, do my best thinking in the shower for whatever. Maybe it's just
Bathroom thoughts.
the
Yeah,
noise isn't out there,
right.
And I got, how do I get this accomplished? And I thought, let's just make it a pedestrian crossing. So I called the county and called our engineering department and said, how much is one of these? Well, we need a culvert, we need a sidewalk, we need to paint the stripes on the road, probably 7,000. Came back to the board, got it immediately.
Right.
And the funny part now is the kids go to the crossing spot, the cars stop automatically, and the kids walk across the
I
road.
love that.
And I'm like, but had that lady not contacted me
Right,
to find a solution to a problem that I had seen for many years
right.
and did never and never connected the
Now you
two.
can't see everything.
No,
You
you
can't
can't.
can't think about everything.
No, you don't. So that's why it's so important. And I get on the radio station and I try to encourage our citizens, call your county commissioner,
Right.
email us, come to the public hearings, tell us something that we don't know. Tell us about the old dead cow that's still sitting in the middle of the road that we drive by all the time. Because I remember there's a place in Palm Shores out in Larkin, and you might know it. It was on Reeves Avenue, where the road split around a tree,
Mhm.
and you always tell people, "Well, go to where the tree is in the middle of the road and
Yeah.
hang a left."
Yep.
You know,
Yes.
that's foreign to some people, but for us in
Correct.
rural Florida,
Yeah.
yeah, go down to
I
where
mean, we were just talking about a cow being dead on the side of the road. That is true to the rural city or rural areas. So,
we'll talk to a hunter around here,
mhm.
and that goes, "Yeah, remember when we killed that deer 3 years ago?"
Right.
That's the intersection I'm at, and they go, "What?" You know? But we
That's
know
fair.
that. We
Yeah.
we know it here, and I think that's the best part about us interacting with our employers. Because
Mhm.
I've always said I work for 73,000 people.
Right.
They don't work for me, I work for them. And my job is to advocate on their behalf. And there's some days no's an answer,
Yeah.
but there might be other ways we can accomplish the goal
Right.
at that point.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's my biggest job, is to try to find, hey, it doesn't, now we're not going to take the square peg and put it in the round hole. We're
Right.
not going to do that. We're not going to get ourselves in trouble by doing things we shouldn't be doing. But can we whittle the stick a little bit, make it fit? Maybe, possibly.
Right. Right.
Maybe
It's
it's not that big. So,
creativity. Yeah.
exactly,
I like
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Tell me what you love or like, or tell me how you feel about serving Putnam County. Like, what makes it special to you? Why don't you go off to Tallahassee or elsewhere?
You know, it's a story we can tell. It's a story we can say, we grew up here. Remember swimming in the lake that Billy Graham was baptized in. I remember jumping off the high dive because I was scared to death, and your friends would push you off.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't want to act like you were scared, but you were scared to death. It was so high up. I remember going to schools. I think the story we can tell about what Palaca used to look like, what Putnam County used to look like, to where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I first got appointed by Governor Scott then, um, there was going to be a party at the governor's mansion. Well, I'm from Palaca. I've never been to the governor's mansion.
Right.
That's not going to happen for me,
Right.
right? So he invited me up, and my goal was not to break anything, just get in the building.
That's a very honorable goal from an
Well,
accident-prone person's
I am
perspective.
too, and if you
Yeah.
ever see me fall at 6'4", it takes me 2 days to hit the ground, when I should just fall and be done with it, right? So, I mean, I make light of that, but I just really wanted to be a wallflower, which I'm not,
Right.
and get out. So I'm standing up against the wall, and I look over to my right, and this gentleman's standing there, and I said, "Hey, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, my name's Jesse Panuccio. I'm the head of the Department of Economic Opportunity." I said, "Well, why haven't you come to Palaca? I have never met you." "Well, no one's invited me." And I said, "Well, come on down." So we came down, and we met here over here at the Riverfront Hotel. That's the old one. I think it was Holiday Inn back then.
Yes.
Yeah, we met there, and he said, "Look, there's a grant that's available through my department, $25,000 grant for planning and development. You can apply for it." And we did, and we started kind of the wheels going on what Putnam County needs to look like going into the future. But those are the responses, and the guy to my left, I'll never forget, I looked over and I said, kind of on a roll. We just mentioned once you sell,
Yeah.
you want to sell
Oh,
again,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I said, "Hey, what do you do?" And he goes, "I'm so and so. I'm the department head of the Department of Transportation." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, we got this road out in Larkin by our elementary school called Strickland Road, and it's falling apart. It's on your small county outreach program that's gonna be done in 5 years, but the road, I mean, pieces of the road are just flying off and hitting cars
Mm.
and houses," and I said, "It's terrible. It's not gonna last many more months." And he said to me, "So, well, you can use your own money, and we will reimburse you when the funding comes available." "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, we sign a promissory note." I came
Well then.
I was back here the next morning in our
Right,
administrator's office at that time with Mr. Leary. He said, "I don't think they do that." I said, "Well, I think they do. The man told me
right.
they did." So we called him up and he said, "Sure, we you just sign the promissory note. You can use your money now to fix it, and then we'll reimburse you when that time comes." I say that to say you've got to be in the room and you got to be able to ask the question. Even
Right,
if you don't know the answer,
right.
ask the question
Oh, yeah.
because you're there to advocate for the citizens of Putnam County to make their life just a little bit easier if you can.
And
So,
and the worst that they can say is the
no,
same thing that you hear, "No."
yeah.
Sometimes the answer
I've been
is no,
told no
but
a lot in my life. I'm good at being told no, but there's an, but let's find another way.
Yeah,
Well, what
exactly.
about this? Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that because there are so many things that maybe what we think is the right way is what we aim for, but we're told no and go about it a different way that is equally correct and maybe even better.
Right.
And working together to solve problems,
Well,
you know?
and that's a great segue into that. You got 5 commissioners up there, and in my business, if you can't count to 3, you don't know what you're doing,
Mhm,
because if you bring up a comment and you don't hear 2 more amens,
mhm,
probably not the right time to continue it. But what I love about the commission, and I really have loved every commission that I've worked with, is that you're able to throw out ideas
right.
that, "Oh, let me catch a little piece of that."
Mhm.
I don't have to hit a home run every time I'm up to bat. I just need to get on base, get my idea heard, and who sometimes another commissioner will champion that.
Mhm.
Take your idea and go, "I think I can do better," run with it. At the end of the day, we all win.
As long
And
as it gets done.
right. So, maybe it's just a thought or a concept, you know. Uh, can I share a
Yeah.
thought that I had?
We're just chit-chatting away. You take all the time you need. I'm excited to
Because it
hear what
just
you have
came
to
to my
say. Yeah.
mind about a thought. Years ago, I was the chairman of the board of Communities in Schools,
Okay.
and we did the Take Stock program and all those programs, the Reads and Writes program in the school. And we had some heavy hitters on that board. I was probably the least knowledgeable of any, but I'm probably the one that drew the short straw to be chairman of the board that year, right?
Right.
So, and I say that lightly because I served with some great people. But at that time, if you remember, The Apprentice TV show started up. Donald
Okay. Oh, yeah,
Trump's,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay. So we're thinking, you know, how do we how do we do a fundraiser? How do we market communities in schools? Because our goal was to touch the at-risk student to get them to stay in school.
Mhm.
That was our goal. So the Apprentice TV show came on, and my wife and I just loved watching it, and then Bill Rancic, if you remember, was the first winner. So so I had this thought one day. I wasn't a county commissioner then. And I was driving home the long way around 310 because sometimes I just needed a break and drive and think.
I get that.
So I'm driving down the road thinking about how could we do this fundraiser? What could be a fundraiser? And it came to mind, why don't you just call him? Really? Call Bill Rancic out of the blue?
Yeah.
So back then, the computer just started really good. Google was happening. So I Googled and I called, and his sister answered the phone. She was kind of his manager at the time.
Right.
And I said, "Here's what we're trying to do." And she said, "Well, let me talk to Bill and I'll get back with you." And she did. A couple days later, she called me and she said he'd be willing to come to Putnam County and raise money.
Oh,
I thought,
wow.
wow. So we contacted radio stations and restaurants, and we had this one restaurant, this one was out of town that did it, Carrabba's over in St. Augustine, wanted to cater the whole thing for free because the whole staff loved it. And we had, uh, back then, the news lady, Donna Deegan, who's now the mayor of
Yeah.
Jacksonville, came down. And so we did a big fundraiser, raised like $25,000 at the Ravine Gardens,
Uh-huh.
eating dinner for communities and schools. And he gave a speech. And the college matched it dollar for dollar for students to go to college there.
Okay.
So we're like, wow. But that's why I said it's so important. You can't be an island to yourself in this
Right.
business. In this world, you can't be. You got to be able to share a thought with somebody and let that thought resonate with somebody else
Mhm.
and keep moving that along,
Absolutely.
because some of us plant, some of us water, and some of us harvest.
Yep.
And that's what,
I
you
well
know,
said.
yeah. And I don't mind planting.
Uh-huh.
I've rode the back of the pine tree planter and put the pine trees in the ground.
Uh-huh.
I like the harvest,
Right?
unless it's not peanuts, and I did that one summer and don't ever go pick peanuts for a living.
Note to self. Okay. I'm gonna have to when we're done here, we're gonna have to look at what that
Yeah.
looks like.
Well, it's about picking them out of the ground, shaking the dirt off, and
Uh-huh.
picking them one off at a time. Laying brick, right?
Yeah.
No, I
I,
can't.
I barely eat grapes because I don't like to do that.
Yeah, it just exactly. So that's what encourages me to work with 5 different individuals. I've had the pleasure of working with many who are just wonderful folks and listening to their thought, hearing my thought, and how can we move. Now, sometimes we have some weird thoughts. Sometimes my thoughts at night, the next morning I'm going, "What were you thinking, Larry?"
Right.
You know,
That is the nature of the beast with the brain.
and my wife goes, when I go to her and go, "Honey, I was thinking," she says, "Stop, just stop."
Yeah.
But I'm a thinker.
Same.
I'm a dreamer. I
Hmm.
wanna make things better for everybody. Go back to the 32-year-old woman that had 2 kids. How can I make that life better?
Right.
If I can make that life better, everybody wins at that point. And that's how I've always looked at it. So,
And have you instilled this sense of volunteerism and dreaming into your children?
I have, and they're amazed that they do things in their community, not as much as possibly I do,
Hmm.
but they're in a larger communities that they serve. My daughter just recently, my oldest one, just became a park ranger up in Jasper area, Jennings,
Oh,
Florida.
congrats to
Yeah,
her.
and if you knew her, you go, that's exactly where she needs
Yeah.
to be. My middle daughter's in Jacksonville giving back, and my youngest daughter is a dental hygienist over in St. Augustine. So you asked me that, and you probably didn't even know that this was about. But Lindsay hated to go to the dentist when she was younger.
Yeah.
Put us through a week of a fit. I
That
don't
was
want
me
to go to
going to
the
the doctor.
yeah, it's the kids and they well, then she became a dental hygienist, and you're like, "Really? We just spent a week going through
Right.
crazy misery because you had to get your teeth cleaned, and now
She
you"
said, "I wanna be the one in power, and I don't wanna be on the receiving
Exactly.
end."
So so the Rotary Club got together, and we got this trailer. Remember, we put the Rotary dental trailer together,
Yeah.
and, she comes over from St. Augustine and volunteers because she grew up in Interlaken, and she does that probably about once every 3 months
I love that.
and spends a whole day over here helping people that have teeth problems,
Yeah.
and it just warms my heart to go by.
Yeah.
So just so yes.
I think it's important to instill that in your children. And, I've had to go back now that I understand things differently. I've had to go back to my children and teach them what it means to be part of a community. And I drag them to any event that I can, no matter how big or small, no matter what I'm doing. During the Blue Crab, we hosted hospitality for the officers who were out there in that heat,
Yeah,
sweating it up in those uniforms. God bless them. And the staff with the Blue Crab had some reprieve up here. And so, but I drugged the girls in here and I made them
sure.
organize snacks and whatever. And, they may not get it at the time, but the goal is to inspire. And I feel like, Larry, there's a gap, and I've said this in a number of podcasts, but from your generation who really were a lot of people were instilled like, hey, you need to be a part of your community. But I feel like my generation, and even more so the younger generations, don't quite have that same dedication to to volunteering.
But they might not have the same experience as
E
we've had,
exactly.
and I go back to how many people had invested in my life when I was growing up
Right,
here in Putnam County, Palaca, Francis area, to where I'm at today. And if you really truly look at it, you should be investing in other people's life.
right.
I remember a time I graduated from school, I left home. Home was not very good at the time, and I was kind of homeless. I didn't know I was homeless. I had a station wagon, and it was pretty
Mhm.
good, you
That's
know.
a whole house right there, a
Exactly.
station
You
wagon.
slept on somebody's couch or bathed here or whatever the case may be. Um, so we all went to the beach one day, came home, and our home had burned down
Mm,
over here on Horse Landing area. And I'll never forget Mr. Riley Bennett, who owned Professional Pharmacy
mhm.
over here across from Johnson Overture Funeral Home. That wasn't a plug for them. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's where it's like the bread store.
Right.
Okay. So he called me at work and he said, "Boy, do you have any work clothes?" And I said, "Mr. Riley, I borrowed what I have on right now." I said, "I lost everything." Now, if you know me, I like clothes.
Right.
I can't afford to dress as expensive as I want, so I go to Goodwill and buy a lot of
I
stuff.
love
Oh,
Goodwill.
I mean, I get
I'm
deals
all
wherever I
about
can.
it.
Yep,
Yep.
me too. So he said to me, he said, "Go down to Harrington's department store," which was down where the pool hall is,
Mhm.
right? And he said, "Tell Bill Harrington I've got an account there. You're going to buy work clothes only, no play clothes. We don't do that." And he said, "And then you pay me $10 a week until that debt's paid off. And I don't care how much money it costs me." Well, I wasn't going to go down there and spend $500,
Right,
you
because you had to
know.
pay it back
Yeah,
either
I
way.
didn't have that, I was just getting a couple and Mr. Harrington was so sweet, "Well, you need another couple packs of underwear and you need a couple more things of socks. You can't wash them every day," and so I finally got, I think it was 200 and that's a lot of money back then. About $230 worth of clothes that I needed, dress clothes, ties, and all. So I'll never forget, I had to pay Miss Riley said, "You gotta pay me $10 a week until the debt's paid. And if you don't pay me, I'm gonna come looking for you." So I was like, "Yes, sir, Mr. Riley." So every week I'd go get paid and I'd go by Mr. Riley's and pay him 10 bucks. And he would smile, you know.
Right.
And I'll never forget, I worked some overtime. They're close to the end of paying off the debt. And I called him and I said, "Mr. Riley, am I able to pay off the debt today if I wanted to? I've worked some overtime and I have some." I didn't know how all the debt
Right,
worked.
right.
And he said, "Yes." And he started laughing and I paid him the 30 something dollars I had, and canceled the debt out and moved on. But I said that to say basically is they don't have the same experience that we had.
Right,
They don't have the same sense of everybody knew each other.
right,
He knew my house probably burned down before I knew my house burned
right,
down. He knew what I needed before I knew what I needed.
right.
And he had the connections. And I've always heard that you need to know who has the light, who has a shovel, and who has the map in this world.
Well, that's good.
And any given day, it could be a different three people.
Late shovel map.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but if you know those three people that can connect you to where you're going,
yeah.
then that's what
Well,
it's
that's
all.
the power of I love one of the things many things I love about this is being able to network and connect and talk to community members and help connect our viewers with things that maybe they didn't know, and inspire them. And so maybe they don't have the same experience, but now that they're hearing, like Nicole said, 150 pieces of
Right,
trash,
right,
liver and onions,
right.
whatever it might be. We
Tuna
all
fish. Yeah,
have tuna fish,
right,
we all have a role that we can play.
right.
And some of us give a lot and may be able to do that, but all of us can give something.
I tell you that the one fundraiser I did that like to kill me, and I'll tell you what happened. Remember when Kirby Kennedy was getting the new liver from Ricky Bobby?
Yes.
Okay, and the
Yes.
community was all about that. Well, it was about cooking 600 pork butts, and I
Uh-huh.
said, "I can do this." So, and and at the beginning of the night, everybody was there. But as the night wore on
So
and the
did
rain
the
came,
uh-huh.
and we're set up in the parking lot at the church beside McDonald's, and spooky sounds would take place, but that's okay.
Right.
Because I was not used to being out till 2, 3 in the morning, and you know, and I'll never forget Commissioner Terry Turner. He wasn't a commissioner at the time. He always got up early, and I didn't. I knew Terry Turner. We've known
Mhm.
each other since we were kids, but I never really, our path didn't cross that
Right,
much.
right.
I knew him from the
Knew of
chamber.
one another
Yeah,
each
I knew
other.
him from the chamber. I always knew he was a very smart, intelligent, hardworking man, and he showed up about 3:30 with the best cup of coffee
Oh,
I
I
think
bet
I've
that
ever had in my life.
that
Yeah,
3 AM coffee hits
yeah,
different.
and I'll never forget that, and he just said, "I knew you might need it." And that little bit, that little appreciation that he did,
Right.
we were able to get through the whole day. We finished it up that morning. By noon, we
I
were
need some
done.
Terry Turner coffee
You
today.
do, you
That sounds
really, but
amazing.
if you can't do anything else but to offer a cup of water, like you said, for the officers for Blue Crab, or give somebody a 5-minute break where they can take their shoes off and relax, or bring them a cup of coffee when you think they might be the only one there,
Mhm.
goes a long way of helping someone.
Absolutely.
So I'll tell you another story if
Yeah,
you got time.
yeah.
Um, when President Trump first became president, he invited a lot of commissioners throughout the United States to the White House. And my goal at that time, we had just came off a hurricane, and we were spending money from our sanitation fund. We didn't have a whole lot of reserves, so we're spending money out of that. So I went to D.C. and you were on the grounds of the White House, but you weren't in the White House. You were over at the Eisenhower Center, and they brought pizzas in, but they had cabinet officials there, and you were able. So I raised my hand, and they said, "What do you need?" And I said, "Well, we've had this funding request in for a while, but we've gotten no response from it, and we're spending our money, and we don't have a lot of resources left. And if another hurricane comes, we're going to be really in trouble." Now, we weren't destitute, don't get me
Right.
wrong, but you can't keep spending money in hopes that somebody's
Sustainability.
gonna pay you well, promises they will pay you back, but
Right.
it takes a while. So they said, "Well, give me your card," and I gave them a card, and, and they called me and said, "Well, your funding is gonna come to the state of Florida next week, and you'll be reimbursed very, very soon." So I met this guy named Billy. Billy was the communications director for this conference. Billy was a Georgia Bulldog fan.
Mhm.
I'm an avid Florida Gator fan.
Mhm.
I had to wear my orange and blue, you know, and he had his red and black on, and but SEC, we're okay. We're still okay. And I have a Gator tattooed on my arm,
I love it.
for yeah. So Billy and I struck up a friendship, and over the years we've stayed in touch. And then one day, my my family was going up there. My youngest daughter and two of the grandchildren at that point were going up to go sightseeing in DC.
Mhm.
So I called Billy and I said, "Billy, do you think there's any opportunity that you could take them on a tour of the Eisenhower office that we were at? The kids would like that." So he said, "Yeah, yeah, I think we can pull that off." So I got to thinking, well, why don't I go up and join them?
Right.
So my wife and I flew up, found out where they were staying. We were in the lobby when they came home from sightseeing that day. And make a long story short, 9 o'clock at night, we're able to go in through the security guards to go to the Eisenhower White House. And Billy stops us right there. The Eisenhower executive office to my left, the White House is to my right.
Mhm.
Billy says, "I'll be right back." And I thought, this is strange,
Right.
right? And he came back and he had some little Hershey kisses that President signed the boxes of and gave them to the kids. And I said, "Billy, we could have got them when we went in the building." And he goes, "Oh, we're not going there. We're going to go in the West Wing." Now, the West Wing of the White House. Here's a guy from Palaca, Florida,
Mhm.
that a lot of people wrote off when I was younger that I'd never do anything.
Mhm.
I wouldn't become much in life at all. And here we are going into the West Wing of the White House because of
Wow.
a relationship we made,
Yeah.
you know? And we were able to stand in the Oval Office of the President of the United States. I don't care who the president is,
Right.
it's a sacred place.
Right.
And I was telling my grandkids, "You're never going to be able to do," and
Right.
all they were interested in was the Coke machine right outside, because
Too young to
they got a
understand.
new Coke machine that had all the flavors, they were
Right.
yeah, but they understood some of but not
And
like
one day
yeah,
they
one day
will,
they
but
will. Go back to relationship, go back to community involvement, Go back to all that. Go back to people investing in your life. Give them a reason to invest in your
Yep.
life. Show up for work early. Be willing to learn. Be available when somebody needs you. Offer somebody a cup of water.
Right.
Start building those relationships because you never know where that's going to take you in life. I look back at all the relationships I've had, and I just, that's where it's at. It's not about the money, it's not
Right.
about fame, it's not about any of that. It's about the relationships at the end of the day. And my youngest daughter says, Dad, when you die, there's going to be the President of the United States at your funeral and the homeless guy because you make them all feel welcome. And I
Oh,
never forgot that. I thought,
yeah.
we should make them feel welcome, shouldn't we? We should make
Absolutely.
everybody feel
I was
welcome.
sitting here thinking I was gonna, maybe roll into another question, but I think that was beautiful, and we're gonna call this that was a period at the end of our
Good.
sentence here. That was wonderful.
Well, I can always come back.
Oh, no,
Believe
no, you
me.
have an obligation because I have some with your history here.
Yes.
Growing up, I'd love to
Yeah.
hear some of your favorite stories, but really, the conversation that was the most important to me is to talk about volunteerism
Yes.
and connecting. And I echo everything that you said. We can all do our part and we can all work together, and those relationships are really what helps us build a strong, vibrant community. And I'm so thankful that you give back to Putnam County, from somebody who is born and raised here. This is home for me, and to know that we have people like you who help make it a better place
Why
is
would not why wouldn't we not want to leave our area better than we found it?
you got me.
Why
That
wouldn't we want to
I
invest in people? Why wouldn't we wanna
exactly
pick up guard? Why would we not wanna help the young lady who gets killed while she's hunting with her dad? Why would we not want to be about that? We
right,
should be about that.
absolutely.
So it's a small thing when we can all work together to make it a big thing, and 150 pieces of garbage,
Hmm.
what does that equate to over the
Exactly.
you know,
And
I
I
mean,
think we already have that. Truly, this
yeah.
community is unique in that. And if you ask other people, that we do step up to help one another. But we all have to remember that one day Larry may want to retire. Somebody's got to take up the Larry torch.
And
Um,
you know what? They're not gonna maybe do it the way Larry did, but
sure, but
that's
that's
fine.
okay.
That is
Exactly.
they're gonna do it better, they're gonna do it their way, and they're gonna still make the same impact that I did.
Exactly. So, well, thank you for all the impacts you
Thank
make,
you.
and I do want to have you come back. You've talked about a number of places that you can get back, whether it be Rotary, whether it be picking up trash, whatever that is. So we'll leave a couple links below so you could check out ways that you can give back to this community. But thank you so much for all that you do,
Thank
and
you.
I look forward to our next
Me too.
conversation. All right, catch you on the next episode. I couldn't get that out. Talk to you soon.